in danger of my life. And so one afternoon, beautiful June afternoon, I built a cabin some distance from the house. Now, this property is so remote, there's no cell phone service. The phone lines are so old that when it rains, they don't work, they short out. It's hundreds of yards on a dirt road to get in there, and it's quite remote. And I built a cabin even in a more remote place in the woods. And we had a little bit of babysitting from the teenage girls up the street, and which was, almost never had that. And so my wife and I went out to the cabin for like a couple of precious hours. It's beautiful summer afternoon. And in mid-sentence, I felt this pain in my abdomen, this incredible pain. And it just radiated downwards, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I finally sort of stood, I thought, indigestion? What's this? Like, I stood up to see if I could work it out, and I almost fell over. I sat back down, and I said words I never thought I'd have to say. I said to my wife, I'm going to need help. I didn't know it, but I had an undiagnosed aneurysm in my pancreatic artery, which is a totally freak thing, right? I mean, it's very rare and it's very deadly. The problem with an abdominal hemorrhage is that, basically your abdomen is a big bowl of spaghetti. I mean, you spring a leak in there, it's very hard for the doctors to even find where it is, much less fix it. If someone had just stabbed me in the stomach, they would know where to stick their finger to plug the leak. But it was internal. And I was bleeding out. I was losing a pint of blood every 10 or 15 minutes. There's 10 or 12 units, 10 or 12 pints of blood in the human body. Once you've lost 2/3 of your blood, it's very hard to pull you back. Even if they transfuse you, it's very hard to come back from that. And the hospital was an hour away. I was a human hourglass, literally it was an hourglass. And so my wife sort of dragged me out of the woods and put me in the passenger seat of the car in the driveway and ran in to tell the babysitters. And while she was doing that, I watched I started going blind. I watched the sky turn electric white. And then that white started to take over the trees and the house and the car and everything. And I didn't know it, but I was syncopic. I was going in and out of consciousness. When my wife came back, I'd be talking to her. I thought I was making sense, just talking complete nonsense. And then would just check out. And then I'd come back, and I had no idea I was going in and out. She thought, every time he goes out, he may never come back. So she was holding my hand saying, stay with me. So finally the ambulance came and took me to the hospital. It took a long time. I went into compensatory shock, which is your body and its incredible, almost infinite wisdom. It knows when it's bleeding out somehow. And, obviously there's no blood outside my body. I didn't know I was bleeding. I was all in my abdomen. But it will shut down the vascular system that goes to all the unnecessary stuff, to the skin, to your legs, to your arms, and it pulls the blood in your chest and in your brain. And so after bleeding out for a while, you can reboot and you sort of feel better. And that's what happened to me in the ambulance. So I sort of came back. I was like, oh, I'm okay. I'm good. This is a waste of an afternoon. I don't really need to go to the ER. And as soon as we got there, I went, you can only hold compensatory shock for so long. And eventually your body lets go. And it did right as we pulled into the ER. I went off a cliff. And I went into end-stage hemorrhagic shock. I was going to convulsions, I was deep hypothermia, incoherent, conscious. But, I had, a doctor later said 10 minutes later, you'd have been dead. Right, so it was quite close. And so I remember they put me in the trauma bay, and suddenly there's all these people around me. And I just thought I was in for belly pain. I was like, what's the party? I had no idea. I absolutely no idea I was dying. And I'm guessing a lot of dying people actually don't. You don't sort of think about that. And a lot of people who die don't realize when they wake up in the morning that this is their last day. I didn't. None of us know, actually, every morning, none of us know that this isn't our last day. It probably isn't. But you don't know for sure, which is either terrifying or is an excellent opportunity to be the person every day, to be the person you would want to be on your last day. if you can think about it like that, it's an enormous opportunity. What would you do on your last day? If you were told this is your last day, the guards are going to come for you at dawn and shoot you. Like, what do you want to do today? Right? You probably wouldn't be on your phone as much, right? Like social media, maybe not. You'd probably be sort of a gentler, more generous person, right? I mean, whatever you would be, like, you would be thinking about, oh, that tree, look at that tree.